Welcome to the second part of the video tutorial series on game art creation in Inkscape. We are covering the basics here. This time around it's all about squares. We'll be playing around with the basic shapes and create a ground platform 2D tile, some variations of it, and a simple crate. The crate also has some circles as decoration for the nails. We covered the circles in the previous tutorial. If you missed that one, make sure to check the blog or go to the channel list and watch the first episode of this series. For now, we take our square and see what the ground tile is actually made up of. We have a basic square, we have the grass at the top, some highlight, we have the grass spikes, which basically are a square rotated and then deformed, where we pull out some of the nodes. The highlight for that one, the rocks that sit in there are a rounded rectangle that we deform. The highlight is also a copy of it that has been deformed using the node tool. And then we just put in some color variation to make the rocks look slightly different from each other. Lastly, we take a copy of those rocks and color them in a darker tone to give it a shadow edge. So let's start the creation process. Clear the explode, and let's start with an empty canvas. We use the rectangle tool in the toolbar or via the F4 shortcut. Select that, and when I drag with the mouse clicked, you can see I can form a rectangle. Holding Control, come on, there. Holding Control makes it a square. This is what we want for this one, so I hold Control, make it a square, and in this case we see the size up here. You can go in and change the size of your object, so let's say we make it 300 by 300, and using the align and distribute, we can just put it in the center of the page. The rectangle object comes with the ability to create round edges. So if I use the node tool, F2, pull down the node on the side, it turns it from a full circle to sharp-edged square in this case, or sharp-edged rectangle if the sides are uneven. For now we stay with the square and create a duplicate of that one. I pull up the Control to scale it, so we create the grass top. We can either choose a color from the color palette at the bottom, or in this case I can use the color picker and pick a color I used in my little reference image that I created earlier. Another duplicate of it, we move it up and scale it to be a little bit thinner. You can also go to the fill at the bottom left, brings up your fill and stroke. It's pretty hard to work with either CMYK or CMS, for example, as a color scheme. I prefer the wheel as it shows the colors, or the HSL. Here you have the H, which represents the colors as you would name them: red, yellow, if I can pick it, green, blue, going to dark blue, purple, magenta, and red. So in this case, we stick to our green and go a tad lighter. Lighter in this case is the L. So if I move up the L, you can see I can go from complete white to black all the way through the green I have selected. The saturation makes it brighter, as in more color intense. If I put the saturation down, the color will go towards gray or black, removing all color value of our particular pick. So in this case, I want something lighter. Lastly, we have alpha in this color setting. 255 equals complete non-transparency. If I go to 0, our object becomes completely transparent. So I can also say, okay, I want something that is in between, and I choose white, then we would get a white object that is semi-transparent. White and black as shading colors never look that crisp. It always makes it look a little pale. So try and go with something that has some color in it. Again, I'm just using the color I chose prior to keep this tile consistent with our reference. So basically we have now a simple platform tile, a little bit of grass on top where our character will walk, the dirt underneath, and now to add some variation, something that makes it look like grass and not just like a green square. We create another rectangle, we rotate it, come on, 45 degrees, and now we're deforming it, first squeezing it and then converting our object to a path via object to path, Shift Control C. If we do that, it allows us to manipulate the corners. In this case, we move the upper one in and the lower one down a little bit. Now pick the lighter color. Inkscape remembers the last color you used as the color for your next object. So now that I've changed it to the dark green, the next object I would create, doesn't matter if it's a square or a circle or whatever other objects I choose, it will have the last color we selected. In this case, just need one, and via Control D, create a duplicate of that one, create another one, and rotate it, and a third one. So we have our one shape with 3 duplicates. If I place that in here, I get something spiky that if we zoom out, let's do that, zoom out, and go with something that would be more along the lines of what we'd see in our game, it becomes grass instead of just being spiky. Via the 5 key, I zoom back in and see my whole canvas. So up there we have even more. Let's add some more. Okay, and another one here, and additional one on this side. One thing I might show while I'm at it is when I click on the rotate, you see a little cross. This cross defines the center of your object or the pivot point. When I rotate things, it will rotate along this point. So moving it from the center to the top left, it now rotates like that. This change of pivot points is really helpful when you create something like the dials of a clock, the limbs of a body where you want to rotate along the joints rather than somewhere from the center of your object. For now, we just use this object and give it the lighter color. This way we just do a little bit of shading of the grass, make it look a little bit more interesting. Come on, rotate it in place for this one. Okay, that was scaling in the wrong direction. There we go. Duplicate of that one and scale. Each time you click on the object, it changes from the scaling. You can see it better on the darker background. You can see this okay, with the pivot point changed, scaling is a little bit odd. Needs some getting used to, so for that we put it back into the center, and now you see the scaling works a lot better. To rotation, the arrows change, and now I rotate, click again, and I scale. So let's delete that one and create a copy for this corner and another one there. For the rocks that we used, take another rectangle. Now we make use of the rounded corner abilities of our rectangles and squares. We round the corners, pick a brownish tone. I could also choose one from down here or adjust it up here, and in this case I go a little bit more red and just a tad lighter. Okay, now this one we convert again from an object to a path. This allows us now to select not 4 but 8 nodes that make up the rounded rectangle. So we want to select 2 and we move them in slightly just to create a more organic, less even shape. Placing it on the background. Now you can see the last object we created is put at the very top of the stack of objects. Just think of them as sheets of cut-out paper that are stacked on top of each other. The one at the very top hides everything that is underneath. We want to bring this one below the grass. We can do that by using the page down, page up key. Now you see I put it too far down. It's underneath our brown base tile. So page up brings it 1 up. Now we have it underneath the grass but above the brown. The next duplicate I will create is being put at the very top again. So we would have to adjust it again if we wanted it below. So now we just do a few of those, just squeezing, rotating, and using the horizontal and vertical mirror. With the F2 node select, we can also deform them further, elongate them, and just create something that looks more interesting than just a simple square. Okay, let's flip this one, place it here, and maybe one more in the bottom corner. In order to use them as tiles in your platform game, it's helpful not to go over the edge, so in the end we can export this square and everything that is on it as one image that we can then put into our game engine. I'll cover the export to PNG in a later tutorial. Now I selected several objects. In order to do that, you can either use the rectangular selection when you hold the mouse down, or press Shift and click on the objects. I want to duplicate all of those, move them down slightly and give them a darker color. Again, I have to use the page down in order to bring them below our base shapes so they form that little bit of a shadow edge. If we want to change the colors, let's go in and say, okay, a little bit more red on this one, a little bit lighter on this one, and this one can maybe go to the more yellowish side. Let's get on the green side. Oh, come on, a little bit more, so they don't have the same colors throughout. We make another duplicate of our shape, scale it down a little bit, just use the L for lightness, so we make it a little bit lighter, and using the node tool, deform it further, so we just pull the bottom ones up. We want to have a highlight at the top of our rocks, so do that with the other ones real quick. Scale it down. If you hold Control and Shift, it will scale. Keep the proportions and scale it in place. If you just hold Control, it will hold the proportions but not the position, or scale it not around the center. So with this one, we do the same thing, lighter, scale it down a little bit, and bring up the bottom nodes. And same with this one. Make it a little lighter. Bring up the nodes. Okay, I should have zoomed in to show you better what is happening. So basically these are the nodes we're bringing up. Adjust them. This object can be a little bit bigger. If you want to try and have similar spacing between your highlight and the base shape on all of them, we won't need highlight for this one, as we have the grass covering the top of the element. Zooming back out via the 5 to show the whole canvas, you can now see our tile. We can select everything. We can group it, so now it becomes one element, or we can ungroup it again to edit. Let's make a variation of this one, and this is where the strength of vectors really comes in. We have our base element. This needs to work together with the other one, so we keep the grass at the top, the base, and then pick our elements that we want and create another version of it. So let's put the grass there, maybe take an additional rectangle to place there to connect the two. We make it pass and bring it in. So our grass will be further down. We cover the edge with some of these elements. And once you have created the elements, it's really quick and easy to duplicate and modify. Let's continue with the rocks. We move them in, change them in color, rotation, just to create a different pattern. So maybe this one can go more red and darker. One, two, dark to red. That might be better. So once you have elements created once, reuse them. We can reuse these rocks if we want for, say, a castle wall, or come on, that's the one. The ground tile that will be grayish stone. It's the same elements. We don't have to do much. We just color and change them a little bit, and it saves a lot of time as opposed to painting elements in Photoshop, Gimp, Krita, whatever you use to create your platform tiles normally. So we have those. One more. Let's make a long one of this one. We delete the elements we don't need. So basically, creating variations is what it's all about, and it's extremely fast to do in a vector tool. For this one, I can take something like this and put some grass at the very top here. So as you can see, just using simple shape like our square / rectangle, we have created a tile and a variation pretty quickly. Okay, these have slightly different color. Adjust the colors a little bit. Okay, again here I would add the shadow, would add the highlights, but we've already done that. Let's skip this one and show you what the whole thing can look like when we put it together. In this scene we have added a simple crate. Let's create one of those. Let's do a new layer and call it crate. Okay, that's another nice feature, and I will cover it in a later tutorial working with layers. For now, we don't really need to go there. Just turn this one off and we do a simple crate, and we pick a brown. Duplicate is Control D and scale it a little bit smaller, holding Control and Shift to center the object while we scale. Do the same thing again, create a smaller one, and that was not the color, that was the color. To create the inner shape, let's take both of them, make them a little bit smaller, leave us some space there. We can take this one scale it so we can create the boards that make up the crate. We add another rectangle at the very top, choose a lighter color for the highlight, and add another light line down here, and do the same thing with the boards. Duplicate, and we scale them up. Okay, and the last one. And basically we have a simple crate. For this one we can just add a little label at the corner using the text tool. Just put a quick text on there, scale it down a little bit, and if I use a rectangle and put a square on top, if I use a square and rotate it 45 degrees, convert it to a pass, and bring the lower node in, I have my triangle. Okay, probably dark red will look nicer. And for the decoration we put circles on, darker shadow, the nail that holds it in, let's give it a little bit of a shade. So we take two lighter circles and put them on top. Group all that with Ctrl G and select those, duplicate them, put them to the bottom. Again, while I hold Control, my movement is restricted. This makes it easier to align the bottom nails to the top ones. Let's put it aside, and again we can do a quick variation. We take a shine of these, duplicate the top one and skew it. Take the shine off that one and let's select those two shapes, duplicate them again, mirror them. In order to show the front boards better, we can take the ones in the back, convert them to objects, and just quickly pull those nodes in. And I'll delete that one, and here we do the same thing. We convert it to an object, from an object to a pass crease, that way around. Now we can edit the nodes here. Basically we just need triangle. So up here you have delete a node, which leaves you with just 3 nodes, and we make them all lines. That way we have our triangle. Triangle goes on this side and that board at bottom. And we have a variation of our first box. You want to go in now and say, okay, this one has a lighter color or totally different tone from the first one. It's extremely easy to change those settings in vectors. A few clicks and we have a variation of our box. Let's keep those colors together. There we go, and the last one goes there. And there we go. Create number 2. Take those off. And putting everything together into one scene, we end up with something like this. This concludes the second part. It was all about squares. I hope you had fun. Please give it a try. Inkscape is a great tool once you start playing with it. And if you like my ramblings, please make sure you subscribe to this channel and watch out for the other tutorials on 2dgameartguru.com or right here in the channel.